Chapter 2 Year 2011 "Do you believe in vampires?" Stephen asked his daughter. "Of course," said Vespa. She looked both ways and pedaled across the street, keeping to the shadows away from the street lamps. Silent, dark homes zipped by on either side of the road. The night air felt cool against her skin. She would soon be old enough to drive, but she wondered if even then they might continue to make their secret excursions on bike. "Really?" His bike glided beside her. She took 3 pedal pushes to each one of his. "It's the only way Santa could keep production going year-round. What's the lifespan of an elf? With the candy and cocoa they're laying back every day, and the year-round work schedule? 80 years tops. Vampires you train once, and they're good for eternity, with no worries about sweet intake. Much more convenient, I say. I'm sure Mr. Jolly St. Nick has figured out the same." "What about finding blood for them to drink? That doesn't sound too convenient," he said. "There's always the elves. Santa had to find a way to get rid of them, once he saw the benefits of vampire labor anyway. Elves are probably the perfect bite-sized snack for a hungry blood drinker." Stephen snorted at his daughter. "Vespa, sometimes you're strange," he said. "Maybe Mom was right. Attending a large high school is slowly corrupting you." "I'm strange. You're the one who started bringing up vampires. Besides, we did just sneak out in the middle of the night to go run in a graveyard. Without telling Mom, I might add. Who's corrupting whom?" "We could go back to the house." "No, I'm going to beat the clock this time, and then you'll have to tell me that deep, dark secret of yours. That's the deal, remember. I make the run in under a minute, and I ask a question." She knew she was practically giddy, and it showed, but she didn't care. So what if her dad made fun of her later? Tonight was going to be her night. She could feel the certainty. It made her tingle. Learning her father's secret had gone past curiosity. Now it was a passion. Something she had to know. Something she was sure would connect her to her father in a deeper way. Private information had a way of pulling people together and making the bond stronger, if both people knew the secret, and she wanted to be closer to her father. Most nights he worked late, coming home exhausted. There would be some conversation, but eventually he would lock himself away in a room and work for another 4 hours. When he finished, his mind was mostly mush, and he talked little. But when they did graveyard runs, or she hinted at his clandestine activities, he was ready to jump into the conversation. She kept probing him with leading questions, until one night he had developed the graveyard run. If she could make the run across the cemetery in under a minute, he agreed he would answer any question she asked. "It looks like rain," he continued. "You might twist an ankle." "Quit stalling," she said, and crouched in the middle of the path. She looked past the wrought iron gate into the cemetery. Mist rose like steam from the moss-encrusted headstones. The smell of pre-rain swept the area. Anticipation tickled her, and she drummed her fingers against the concrete in a jittery motion. "I own you, graveyard," she thought. "Okay. On my mark," he said. The first beep of the alarm began, and Vespa broke into full sprint. Blasts of air whipped her long hair. A streak of lightning spread overhead, flashing blinding light. In the burst, a mud hole, caused by a patch of missing cobblestone walkway, was illuminated. Dodging to the hole's right, the path vanished into a milky cloud of fog. Spears of moonlight filtered through the weeping willows, giving just enough light to avoid tombstones. The squishing of her footsteps on the grass was scarcely perceptible above the groaning wind. The hole had thrown her off the best path, but that was no reason to panic. There was still plenty of time. She would have smiled, but she was already beginning to pant. A vase of Gerber daisies scattered as Vespa jumped over Addison Willard, beloved father. What were the dates of birth and death? There was no time to check, and she knew her father would test her on these later, might even hold back part of his answer if she beat the clock, as punishment. He was always trying to make her aware of the details. Soon the beeping of the stopwatch would end, and she wasn't there yet. She had yet to see the black gate, which remained hidden in the darkness. Her legs pumped harder, causing her lungs to burn. A drop of rain pelted a splintered wood cross ahead. Spinning kept her from colliding with the grave marker. Her shoes slipped across the grass, dumping Vespa into the mud. Oh, dung beetles! An actual curse was on her lips, but she could never manage to say them while looking at crosses and other religious paraphernalia among the headstones. She still had time, but she needed to be calm if she hoped to reach the gate. Running recklessly into another headstone would kill her chances of learning her father's secret. When she panicked, injury followed. A glance at her watch revealed only seconds remained. Gack! She fled forward, not focusing on any of the graves any longer. Where was that blasted gate? Panting and ignoring the pain, she jumped over a headstone. Materializing from the night, the black gate appeared 5 yards away. The bars swung outward, inviting those inside the graveyard to leave. Faster, faster. With a scream, she leapt across the threshold. The beeping on the watch went silent. I made it! I made it! She shook the watch several times to make sure there were no broken pieces. She checked the time again. Then she thought, of course I made it. I'm amazing. Breath wheezed into her lungs. The damp grass caught her as she sprawled backward. The fire in her legs felt like months would pass before she'd become whole again. She didn't care. She'd beat the graveyard run. Like a ghost, her father emerged from the mist. He bent down and helped her stand, then slapped her on the back. Good job, he said, a grin on his face. I'm sure the $200 sneakers made all the difference. She'd saved her allowance money for months to buy the shoes. They slipped on the grass, she said between gasps of air. Twist your ankle? She glared back at him, but she couldn't pretend to be angry. Her excitement was too obvious. Then I guess I owe you the answer to one question, her dad said. You already know what I'm going to ask, she said, excitement building inside. This was it. She waited so long. A part of her, however small, wondered whether she would be disappointed when the mystery was gone, when her father told her his deepest secret. But another thought, who cares? I want to know. I could tell you all about water pipeline design. She rolled her eyes. I don't doubt you know civil engineering. Just that I'm a civil engineer. You think my job is more covert. Yes. Do you work for... What were the birth and death dates from 3 of the graves, he asked. Come on! She wanted to sigh loudly in frustration, but she remained patient. To an extent. Nope. You know you're supposed to pay attention to the details. What good is rushing when you don't take in anything around you? She sighed and pushed a lock of sticky hair from her face. There was Jonathan Pruitt, 1904 to 1982, and a Samuel Claiborne, 1925 to 1999, and a Elvis Presley, 1930 to 1970. Elvis? Yeah, that grave had rhinestones. Couldn't miss it. She flipped her hair and put on her I'm innocent look. He tapped his chin for several moments. I don't know. You didn't memorize 3. I'll do it again. Besides, that was never part of the original agreement. He held up his hands in surrender. Okay, there's no doubt you can finish the run in time. He looked over his shoulder at the empty cemetery and the nearby copse of trees and bushes bordering the sidewalk. His face grew serious. What I'm about to tell you can't leave this place. Understood? I knew it, she gasped. I haven't even told you what it is yet. He looked back at the tree line. Did you hear something? No. I think I heard something back where we hid the bikes. Wait here. You're stalling. You can't hold out forever. He didn't answer. Vespa watched her father walk into the thicket. Annoyed, he withdrew right when he was about to reveal who his true employer was. She hadn't decided whether it was CIA, NSA, or FBI. Whichever organization it was, her dad was definitely undercover. Would there be secret tales of infiltration? Would he teach her everything he knew so one day she could be a super spy? Several minutes passed. He was taking forever. The bushes whipped. Thunder rumbled in the sky. Dad? Everything okay? There was no answer. You didn't leave me, did you? Who knew what her dad was capable of doing? He did, after all, bring her to run in graveyards in the middle of the night. Maybe this was just the next step in his plan. Vespa went to the edge of the outcropping and listened. There was only a light dripping of rain, and then a scream pierced the silence. The noise blocked every other sense, leaving her with only the drifting echoes. Her hands trembled. Vespa sprinted into the thicket in the direction her dad had gone. Branches caught and snapped at her clothes and arms and legs. "Dad! Dad!" Her legs knocked out beneath her, and she flew into a clump of ferns. Mud plastered her face. Picking herself up and turning back, she saw what tripped her. Her father's body was sprawled face down. She ran to him and rolled him over. Deep slashes covered his chest. Blood oozed from gashes across his neck. An urge to run and hide shot through her, but shock rooted her to the spot. Some analytical part of her mind took over and pushed the scared part aside. He needed help. That was the first step. "Help! Please! Anyone!" Vespa yelled. What did this? She had heard of large animals entering the city. She pulled the cell phone from her father's pocket. Staying calm was important. A hysterical person would slow everything and make communication harder, but her panic was on the edge, waiting for her to lower her guard. Several yards behind her, the bushes moved and twigs snapped. She spun, but the space was empty. She wanted to bolt, but refused to give in to the feeling completely. Her dad needed her. A voice picked up on the phone. "We're at the cemetery. My father's been injured. A bear, maybe." Vespa's words rushed out. She looked around again. For a half-second, through the trees, she saw a flash of white, illuminated by moonlight, pass a distant path. There was no other movement. The forest remained silent, except for the patter of rain. She looked down at her father. She felt his heart stop beating under her fingers. Her father was dead.